and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. We are episode 54. That's like the age where you become sad. My name's Quentin Smith and I'm joined by Matt Lees.
Hello.
And it's just us today.
It is. Just me and you and some
video games.
We've also been, we've had a couple of large ciders because we've had a very long day making fantastic videos. Actually, on this Thursday, you'll be able to watch.
Fantastic.
It's going to be good. I can feel it in my bones. We've got a video about 80 days, which will be up on the website this Thursday.
Yep.
And also, I've been working from the crack of dawn on a video about Destiny the Taken King, which came out last week and is on coolghost.net. Because obviously this is a podcast brought to you by coolghost.net.
It's good.
It's good.
We just finished our first patron hangout. Not to toot our own trumpet. We'll get into some really good video games in just a second. But my God, that hangout for the patrons was really fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a thing we kind of threw in as being like, this would be a cool thing to do with people who are willing to donate to the future of the site. They'll be able to pop in, hang out with us, ask some questions, but we had a whale of a time.
Yeah, the first game we're going to review is the game of the software of Google Hangouts, where what you do on listed Hangouts.
It's great.
People can ask questions and then actually upvote them, and then you can tag them and answer questions. And
so if you want to see what this is like, if you want to know a bit more about us, or mainly just like the site and the future of the site, and all sorts of actually kind of probably fairly interesting behind the scenes stuff, if you're interested in this kind of thing, then you can go to, again, coolghost.net, and I've put a link in last Friday's thing. It's kind of this podcast going out in the future. So if you go to last Friday's post called Something for the Weekend, there will be a thing prominently at the top of that saying, hey, if you want to watch the hangout, we're not going to put it on the site as a video because it's not really, like, strictly speaking, kind of what we treat as video content. But if you go and look at it on the hangout thing, I think you'll be able to go and see the questions and see the responses to them. It's a pretty cool piece of software. And if you want to check it out, then keep an eye out towards the end of next month, and we'll invite you along for some more.
Boom! And now we've done our promotion, I want to talk about a video game, what I've been playing this weekend that's really good, it's exciting, but you haven't played it. So your job for the next 5 minutes
is to
make sure I'm... Well, no, it's the opposite. It's to make sure I'm not being boring.
Okay.
And the game is City Skylines After Dark.
It's a nighttime.
It's night. And it actually adds nighttime to City Skylines, which is the game that came out where everyone was like, oh, this is everything I wanted from SimCity. By a small developer.
And this is a really big thing, right? Because they kept adding in, like, well, they didn't add stuff in. Modders were amazing, and they basically realised that actually, rather than doing tiny little things in the way that SimCity was like, hey, download this hot dog shaped building. That's not a thing they did.
For only 50 cents.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of microtransaction stuff, and they've allowed the community to handle a lot smaller stuff. So they want to make sure that with this expansion, they added something meaty. And so it's called After Dark, and it adds nighttime, but obviously it adds loads of other stuff.
Yeah, the idea was that if you haven't played City Skylines, I think the thing that I've not seen a lot in reviews that I would mention is, like, you know how you play SimCity and you're trying to make a nice city, but especially this was the case with things like 3 and 4, it's quite tough to earn money sometimes, and you want to make actually developing a city and just creating the city of your dreams kind of. Sometimes the game is tough and gets in the way. Skylines doesn't care. Skylines says, oh, you've got a residential zone. Here's some tax money. Great. Good job. Do you want a zoo? It's just fun. And yes, the mod support's there, and they knew that modders could make more like building types than they ever could. So with After Dark, what they focused on is stuff that affects like the code base, the stuff that modders wouldn't necessarily know how to tweak. So there's stuff in there like, now you can have tunnels. If you press page down, you can dig roads into the earth, and you can just connect them up together. And also whole new zoning types, which are like revolutionary stuff. So here's what you can do, Matthew. You've got your town. What's your town called?
Sexville.
You've got Sexville, but there's not much sex happening in Sexville, is there?
What's wrong with me?
There's not... I don't know, man.
I find myself in bars occasionally just looking at men and going, what's wrong with us? What the fuck are we? And that was just me being a man.
Do you want to take another bite of that apple?
I'm sorry.
Do you want a different name for your town, or are we sticking
Sunshine
with this?
City.
Sunshine City. The other problem with Sunshine City, there's not much sex happening. So there's a new thing you can do. You can zone commercial districts, which are usually like shops and stuff. You can zone them into nightlife districts. Is one of the things you can do in After Dark. And the interesting thing about them is, A, they create shitloads of noise, but only at night. And this is the new thing. What do you get with the expansion? You get new code, you get a new day-night cycle. And I don't remember this being in SimCity, but the cute thing you've got here is that, like, in the morning, people will go to their jobs. In the evening, they'll go away from their jobs back home, and they'll go to the nightlife district. And in a game like City Skylines, which is really... And I'm really hoping that you jump in whenever I'm being boring here.
No, I'm liking this.
Okay, good. So Skylines is mostly a game about public transport. Colossal Order, who are the developers who just burped up this amazing SimCity game that you should absolutely get if you're at all into city development games or development games in general. Their history is with a series called Cities in Motion, which is literally a game where you design buses and trains. And
it's also the worst name for a game ever.
Cities in Motion. I just think about like bodies in motion. I think about like
sounds like a really bad name for a new romantic band.
I think about digesting food personally.
These things are great.
Yeah, so they knew roads and they knew traffic, and that is absolutely shown in City Skylines, because the one big thing that gets in your way isn't money. It's not like taxation or whatever. It's the fact that your city just has horrific traffic jams and people can't get where they need to go. So, yes, the new day-night cycle is super interesting for that. Because, like, for example, you might have a city... Like, I was designing my city, and it had incredible traffic across this bridge at 9 in the morning. And I was like, this is really bad. But it is only in the morning, and maybe my people can just put up with it.
And it's only 9 in the morning. Of course, it's rush hour. People are used to it.
Yeah, so it's super neat and fun, and obviously it's nice seeing all the lights pop on.
To be honest, I've just seen screenshots, and I've seen screenshots of the city at night, and it's beautiful. I love cities at night. And I mean, it may just be now that, you know, it's kind of like slightly tipsy Matt talking, and slightly tipsy Matt is bringing up all these slightly tipsy memories. But whenever I find myself in foreign cities and a bit tipsy in a hotel room in a high tower block, I just always end up being like...
Which you do often in your jet-setting millionaire lifestyle.
Back in the day, I was quite the traveller to the same cities in America again and again to look at different video games.
To see exactly 2 things. The inside of a hotel, the inside of a steak restaurant, 3 things, and the inside of a developer's office.
That's pretty much it. But then I'd drunkenly lean outside onto the crap balcony or just... try and take photos with my SLR of static traffic. And I don't know, I just think it's beautiful. And
see, I've had that exact same attitude. You're like, I've made it, you think, while in the back of your mind you wonder how you're going to write a 6-page preview of an MMO that no one's going to play.
I think it's just beautiful. I think it's not often that you get to have these vertical views of cities at night and just watching all the traffic lights and the kind of like, you know, the lava brake lights and all this stuff, and it's really cool. And I've seen screenshots of Skylines at night, and they've really captured that kind of like... There's something about a city at night that's kind of beautiful. And actually, one of the things that I always remember about GTA 4, I don't know why, is the first time I heard that Phil Collins song that was in GTA's 4, the GTA's games, was the first time I was flying a helicopter.
Yeah, I remember that, because the first mission I think where you get a helicopter in GTA 4 is like you're with the like, I think he's Jamaican, the Jamaican guy, and he's smoking weed in the helicopter, and you can hear Nico being like, "What are you doing?" And it's so surreal, that particular script. And I remember but his character's thing is like, "No, look at this, we're above Liberty City in a fucking helicopter. This is some James Bond shit." And it reminds me of what they did with Trevor, the psychopath in GTA 5, where it's like characters who just speak your mind, speak the mind of a gamer playing a video game.
Yeah, which is terrifying in the case of Trevor. But
and he's my favourite character in the game for that reason. He's like, I think Trevor's the smartest thing about GTA 5.
You're probably right. But yeah, no, it was the thing of just being like having this beautiful, shining city at night with "I can hear it calling in the air tonight."
That's
and the
great.
thing about that song is, everyone always remembers the no, sorry, I jest, but actually,
can you explain that joke for the 50% of our audience? What is American?
If you're an American, then I just transitioned the Phil Collins drum solo into the theme tune from a very popular British TV soap called EastEnders. Which is funny. Anyway, it's more the fact that the thing about that song that I hadn't really captured from soundbites was the fact that actually the really powerful thing about that song is the gaps, and the fact that in this build-up to that drum moment, you have these really sparse moments of like not a lot happening musically, and it's actually quite a rare thing now in pop music. Pop music is quite, it's leveled in a certain way.
Yeah. So this is the loudness.
Yeah, it's leveled to be kind of constantly quite loud and constantly quite attention grabbing. Whereas this Phil Collins track in particular, it's not. I don't think it's the best song in the world, but it has like these moments. It requires your attention. It has these moments of not a lot happening and this atmospheric stuff, and having this moment where you're in a helicopter and you're in this air and you're just focusing on this, especially with GTA, which is a game which is actually again quite loud. You're always on the street. There's always noise. There's always car engines.
Well, there's not. They're very careful with that. That whenever you get out of a car, the soundtrack never follows you, except on the rare occasions it does. It really plays with...
No, the soundtrack doesn't follow you, but the noise does.
Oh, what, you mean you get out of a car and it becomes a noisy street?
Yeah, one of the things that bothers me about GTA sometimes is I'm really enjoying a song and I want to stay in the car.
Yeah.
In the same way
you must have done that, the thing where you get to a mission and then you lap the block because you want to finish listening to the song.
I used to do that in real life. I used to
actually, so did I.
Wait outside the corner before going to see my girlfriend because I wanted to wait for the Mars Volta album to finish. Because I just fucking loved it and it was in a really good bit. But I guess that's what I liked about the helicopters is because it had this thing of you didn't have to it also wasn't even just about getting out the car for a mission. It might be like you bump the police and then you had to do a chase and it was harshing your buzz, man.
Yeah, I mean, GTA 5 I will always defend as like, people complain about GTA 5 a lot like they complain about like say Metal Gear Solid 4, that it's this big complicated game and it's not even satisfying for a lot of its duration and it's overly developed. But I will always defend it. Like GTA 5, same as 4, it's a game of moments. You don't play it for the storyline or the missions. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do, but if you're like me, if in whatever way, for a start, I'm sorry. But also, if you're like me, you will play GTA 5 for like 40 hours, and you will play it for probably like in those 40 hours, maybe 3 moments where, you're on a highway at night and you're not on a mission, but you've just finished one, and you're driving back to your apartment, and just the right song comes at just the right moment, and it's like, oh, this is a fucking cathedral. This is this is thousands upon countless man hours creating this one perfect moment, and it's not even a moment for everyone. It's my moment. It's my song at my point in the plot with my headcanon on my road, and it's perfect.
You know what I find fascinating about this though is the fact that I've managed quite successfully within my own life to just quite deftly escape the rat race, and yet I find it really hard to escape the rat race in video games. In the fact that GTA just has you this sort of constant breadcrumb trail of missions and things to do, and actually from what I can tell, the real joy in GTA 5 is just getting out of there, just ignoring it.
Ignoring it and doing whatever you want.
You've got this whole map. Just go to the mountains. Just do something. I see people mountain biking down the mountains and doing all these daft fun things, and I somehow my brain just can't do it. It just keeps going to the mission pointers and doing the missions.
To Rockstar's credit, that was one of the nice things about GTA 5 was that it force-fed you, for example, skydiving in the missions. And actually, my favourite mission in GTA 5, which I will always tell people, people will be like, oh, I didn't do GTA 5, especially friends of mine who are super into indie games and will roll their eyes at a AAA game. I always try and play everything, right? But with those people, I always say, okay, just listen. There's a mission where you're like, oh, we have to shoot down this plane and get the object inside, the abstract loot, it doesn't matter. So they shoot it with a gun that is comedically large, it's in the back of a van large, and they shoot it and it starts going down, and it's got the 3 character system, so it jumps to Trevor, who's on top of a mountain, and Trevor's like, I don't know how you expect me to get the loot, and they're like, look, and he looks up and the plane is crashing, and it's crashing it's going down slowly, and Trevor's on top of a mountain on a mountain bike, and they're like, chase it, and then you get control. So you are racing down a mountain, a full fucking sized mountain, after a plane that's slowly crashing, with obviously amazing music on the radio that they've scripted to be playing at that exact moment, and you're going over jumps and you drive, and obviously that's bliss. It's just perfect.
I think the thing I found frustrating in the end is that I didn't get to that point, right? I played it for probably about 15 hours, and I think the thing I find frustrating about GTA is the way that people always talk about it, and the way that press talk about it is as if it's this sort of cinematic film-like experience. And I don't think it is. I think actually the nature of the way that the narrative unfolds in GTA is more like a Japanese RPG, and the fact that it gets you to care about the characters by you just spending a vast amount of time with these characters in lots of very small incidental cutscenes which you have to work quite considerably for to unlock. Whereas something like The Last of Us, what I adored about that was the way it just cut away huge swathes of chunks of time by just going, you don't need to see this, and just going boom boom, and just going, now we're cutting to this.
I mean, Last of Us is an amazing case study in just how little time.
That's how you do cinema games.
I agree, and Last of Us is my favourite jump cut ever, which is where is it Ellie and Jake? Did I get that right?
I don't know if it is. I don't think it is Jake. I
don't think it's Jake either. Joel.
Yes, that's him.
And I don't even know if it's Ellie.
It is Ellie.
Okay, good. So Ellie and Joel get in a car, and Joel's like this world-weary man, and Ellie's in the back seat being like, "Whoa, we made it! God! Like, oh wow, I can't believe we did that." And Joel's like, "You should get some rest." And she's like, "I'm not even tired." And then there's a beautiful jump cut.
Yeah.
They keep the camera in the same place. It's a very modern filmmaking thing, and she's just asleep.
Yeah.
And he's still driving in exactly the same position, having conserved his energy. Oh, it's beautiful. But so the interesting thing about GTA 5, and I doubt even Rockstar know this, is that with a GTA game, now they've got themselves in this position where they have to provide an epic. Or at least they feel like they have to provide the 100-hour game. And I would be super interested in a study which can never happen, which is, would the world in general be happier with the world's most stunning 15-hour GTA game, or what they've been doing for the last few, which is 80 hours of padding?
Yeah.
And we'll never know.
I wonder, because I think loads of people didn't finish GTA 4, and I reckon loads of people didn't finish GTA 5 either.
I mean, I reckon it's like Pillars of Eternity. People ask for this.
And they don't want it. Yeah.
And then actually the stats prove that people don't want it. They like the idea. It's like board games. I
love the idea, but I just can't stand it when it does a thing of I'm just into the mood, and then it goes, oh, let's have you doing a mission where you drive a lorry for a bit.
Well, that's Pillars of Eternity's. Oh, let's go into this dungeon for 4 hours.
You see, I disagree with you about Pillars, but that's
fine. But it strikes me that this is probably similar to. So there have been studies with board games that I know about because we do Shut Up and Sit Down, whereby if you track people's heart rate, and it was Hasbro that did this, I think. If you track people's heart rate and excitement when they receive a board game, it peaks when they're taking the cellophane off and opening it up, and it never gets back where it is. I've told you this before. So you open it up and then they're excited, and it's still quite exciting when they're playing it, but it dips when they have to read the manual. So I reckon Witcher 3, GTA, all this stuff is as big as it is, like Ubisoft games as well, Assassin's Creed, the collect 1,000 flags thing. I have a suspicion that it's that way, and I wish I was just a bit more connected in the games industry because I'd have an answer. I reckon these games are so big because people buy them because they're chasing the endorphin high of Witcher 3, for example. Your first moments in the Witcher 3 being like, this is a world, I'm going to spend 1,000, I'm going to have sex with so many women, I'm going to kill so many wyverns. But actually most people do exactly what I did with The Witcher 3, which was play it for 8 hours and go, oh, his controls kind of piss me off, put it down, I'll come back to it later, and never come back to it.
I did that after 40 minutes. And I'd like to go back because they've apparently patched it up and people keep saying it's amazing. But no, I think you're right, and I think actually that's one of the reasons why for years I've always defended Call of Duty, because people always...
Yeah, the campaign, right?
They always go, oh, the campaign's too short, and it's like, it isn't, because Call of Duty is a game which understands the ritual, and the ritual is you buy it. Oh my god, I'm excited. And you know what? You don't want to sit through a long campaign. What you want to do is play it with your mates. And so it has this thing, if you buy it, you play this campaign. And I'm not saying the campaigns are good. Often they are actual dog shit, and they could be, for what they do.
It's 50% of the time, right?
It's a really bad success rate. And for what they do, they could do what they do better. I'm not excusing it. I get what they're going for. They don't nail it. But what they go for is smart, of just being here's something you can finish in tops 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
And it's basically this idea of you buy it, you're excited, you go home, you put it in your console, you play it, you complete the campaign, and during the campaign it introduces you to most of the new toys that you can play with in the multiplayer. But then that's it. You go into the multiplayer and that's it. You don't care about the story. The story is just a part of it. And you know what? They've kind of lost their way with that. But back in Modern Warfare 2 was the perfect example of this. It was just this fantastic, stupid roller coaster where you're hyped as fuck. You get this game, you put it in your console, you have this amazing nonsensical roller coaster that if you look at it for more than 2 seconds you go, hang on a minute, is this an Escher painting? What the fuck is going on here? It doesn't make any sense at all. But then you're in and you're shooting people online, you're having a blast, and that's all you want. And then from that point onwards you can tap out whenever you want and you've had a good time.
It reminds me of all things, remember, I think it was a couple of weeks ago we did an episode where you'd bought the Taken King expansion for Destiny.
Yeah.
You'd spent £40 on it, and I said I'm going to sit this one out.
I didn't. I mean, full disclosure, I get it from Activision. I don't buy it.
You son of a bitch.
I'm sorry. I mean, you could probably do that as well, but I'm sorry.
I need to do some Destiny.
I mean, that's as far as my relationship with developers and publishers goes. They can send me free copies of games, and I will cover them.
So
I only ask for them if I'll cover it.
I ended up caving and buying the Taken King. Do you know why I did it?
Full disclosure, I would have paid it. I fucking love it.
Anyway, so I ended up caving. You know why I caved is because of the...
I wondered, because you were like, I'm level 40. I'm like, you said you weren't going to do this.
It was a Friday night, and my girlfriend went out. Oh, no, it wasn't even a Friday night. I just had an evening to myself, and I said I wasn't going to do it. And then what actually happened is it was the endorphin rush. It was taking the cellophane off. It was... I knew I had like 2 hours to fill, and I couldn't think of any more exciting than the first 2 hours of any Destiny expansion.
Digital cellophane.
Which Bungie have nailed, which is when you buy an expansion, everyone go... Actually, it's funny, because with Crota and the Taken and House of Wolves, which are the last two, when you buy it, there's a few new people to talk to, and that's what I was buying Taken King for. Like, just, like, with no labour, they would give me cool shit. And they've nailed it with the Taken King, because in the Taken King, you start it, and about all 20 people in the tower, all 20 vendors go, Guardian, oh my god, Guardian, oh look, we've got this gun, there's this mystery, like, I got some shoes for you, like, here's a shader, also, oh my, Guardian, you've been playing for a year, here's a bike.
My daughter made these shoes for you.
My daughter, she'd like to meet you.
You know what that is? That's actually because they were like, that was part of the year one event.
I know, yeah.
And I couldn't get that either. I'm like, why does everyone want to fucking talk to me? What's going on? And they're all giving me like mostly garbage, but I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah.
When does this end?
I mean, but the Bungie also have us trained to love new content so much, because if you play Destiny, you'll play the same stuff.
Hey, you like ragged on me a couple of weeks ago. Like, we're not ragged on me, but like, all right, you're not allowed to talk about unless you explain it. It's well done this time, right?
Oh no, okay, yeah, I made fun of you saying you're not allowed to talk about the Taken King unless you can explain the story, and I thought that was going to be awesome Daft Souls podcast content,
because you're gonna watch me
because no fucker can explain the story, and then you did, and I was confused, and sure enough, I played the Taken King, and it's like, oh, they've got like rudimentary storytelling stuff down.
It's fun though, right?
Yeah,
it's this weird thing of like the characters you know start talking, and you're like. Oh.
It's this weird thing that the phenomenal voice actors from Firefly and The Wire are given actual dialogue and jokes to say.
Yeah, especially, you know, it's one of these weird things where like a lot of people are going, yeah, but it's mostly just Nathan Fillion being Nathan Fillion from Firefly.
Are you kidding me? Like,
and it's like, you know what, Firefly's dead. Like, one of them's a fucking absolute nutbag. I never want it back. It's done. So I'll have more Nathan Fillion from Firefly. Put him in Destiny.
I mean, the other thing is also like figure out what voice actors are good at, and you know, there's something to be said for making them do that.
It's just Nathan Fillion from Firefly, but a robot. I'm happy with that. Like, put him in Destiny forever. We can put those funny fellas with the blue hands that we never found out about them.
I also
put them in Destiny.
The weirdest thing about the Taken King's plotting is I'm going to do my best to make this interesting for people who haven't played Destiny. So the Crota under what Dark Below? What's it called? Dark Below is a different
It was
game.
the Dark Below, then it was
Dark
House
Below,
of
yes,
Wolves.
good.
Yeah.
So in Dark Below they introduced a character who was basically like Maudlin incarnate. She's literally crying black gas from her eyes permanently. That's not an exaggeration. And she speaks in a very... Okay, Matt, ask me a question and I will answer it in my best Eris Morn fashion.
How can we stop Crota, Quentin?
Only by entering into the darkness and not looking back can we gaze into Crota's soul.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I did my best. I was hoping you'd ask, like, have you done the shopping? And then I'd do Eris Morn.
Oh, okay. All right. Have you done the shopping?
No. So anyway, Eris Morn probably does do the shopping. She's very...
But they take the piss out of it, right?
No, yes, this is the thing. They've done this character who's super maudlin, and then for the duration of the Taken King, they are making fun of that character because she is still herself.
But it's weird because it's like making fun of the history of the game, which is kind of fun. It's like they've kind of made fun of what the game was, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I like it a lot, but
they still haven't allowed the warlock. So the interesting thing about Destiny is the tutors who are for the different. I say this is the interesting thing. This is boring, but the three different class sort of tutors, the teachers, are played by the police chief from The Wire, and then also Nathan Fillion and the girl who was also in Firefly. So Nathan Fillion was the captain in Firefly, and then the black girl who goes out with Wash in Firefly. She's also at the table. She's the person who's the warlock tutor. So she's standing right next to her old captain, and they never get to talk. And she's still boring. She's still boring in the Taken King, and I want to see her fun side.
Yeah, they've kind of made it so everyone else is a straight man, and Fillion's just like leading the charge.
Fine. That's fine.
I get it. It's fine, but it's fun, and it's like it needed to happen. And actually, I found myself thinking last time, like, oh man, I really wish I had a ghost that just had like was just Rick from Rick and Morty. I just love that, just being like, you gotta go and kill these guys.
I mean, that's the future, isn't it? You know how Steam did, Valve did
Yeah.
announcer packs for Dota 2, so you can have like comedy celebrities.
Well, they say they're planning to add a new one every year. As like maybe...
like a Doctor Who Regenerator.
Yeah, almost. So you can just choose a different one if you want a different one. And I'd love it if they started to have like comedy ones.
Incredibly
But I suppose the problem is the more...
the Vex! You gotta kill her!
I'd love it. I'd really... And it would just be a better game because it doesn't need to be serious and po-faced. And actually, I had a funny moment where like we were playing one of the new encounters in the Dreadnought, which is basically a difficult boss encounter that you can summon in a public area, so like strangers can come in and join in. And it's cool, but like it's a different encounter. And actually, what it does is it summons a boss from the second raid. It summons Crota, basically. And it means that if you haven't done that raid and you don't know how to kill Crota, you don't know what you're doing. But the problem is also you can only go in with 2 other friends, and so you have to rely on having a few other people who are strangers who are going to help. And if they don't understand the encounter, you're kind of boned. And so it relies on this thing of like having strangers who are willing to help for basically no reason, but also, which is fine because it's just fun to do stuff. But we had this thing where we kept fighting this thing and the people who were with just didn't get it. And I was like, oh, well, maybe if we keep doing it, they'll just like...
figure it out.
They'll work it out. They'll look at what we're doing and wonder why do we keep dying? Why do we keep failing? And they didn't. But the guy was playing with this funny thing and it was like really like a kind of testament to how badly things have been done in the past with Destiny. He was like, oh, why didn't they should call it like... They should at least like make it obvious that this is like, you know, he's a relative of Crota. Like they could make it like call him like the cousin of Crota or something. And I was like, dude, like that's the whole game. Like, the whole game is like, oh, this guy is the second cousin removed of this guy. And it's like you're constantly being like, oh, we thought we killed them all, but he's got this really angry stepsister.
I mean, like so much of Destiny, it only gets away with because it's so, like, credit to the artists and like so many people on Destiny's team, like it looks so beautiful and bombastic and the music and the voice acting, and it's so many people trying to carry what is ultimately just a bad script a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, my girlfriend just loves when I play Destiny because she laughs so much. And I was saying this before the podcast, there's a bit, you're doing a mission and Erismorn pops up and says, yes, take the crystal, then you will have the essence of Crota's soul and be able to travel through the, what is it?
There was something rift.
The rift.
The cool rift.
And my girlfriend was just like, this is sub-dark crystal level, like nonsense.
Yeah, but it's like, I love that they've embraced it, and I really hope they would. It's like, this is camp stupid bollocks, and if they just embrace that it is, then it's going to be wonderful. And they have, and I love it. It's just sci-fi nonsense. It's fantastic. I really, really enjoy and recommend.
Yeah, you know what? Before taking King, I was like, I don't know if you should play Destiny, but after taking King, I think it's not been a huge change in my personality, but I think now it's like, yeah, just fucking try it.
I've always been on side with Destiny in the fact that I've always been like, you know what? It's not great, but they just nail the shooting so much.
It is, I think I said this on a Daft Souls probably like years ago, but the thing to know about Destiny is that every enemy type has a different beautiful animation for if you kill it with a headshot.
Yeah.
And like the headshots specifically only unlock this beautiful gaseous
animation.
animation.
You guys like seem to have, and this all happens within like a fraction, a moment of a second, but the new guys, like some of them, you shoot them in the head and it splays out this like black hole.
And then their body
which then gets sucked into it. It's like It's like a splash of black hole that their body gets sucked into, and it all happens within like
a split second,
a third of a second. And it's weird in the fact that there's something about the new enemies, the Taken, which appears to be incredibly cliched and trite, and yet when you see them in action and when you're fighting them, they're just so fresh and so new and so exciting. It's fantastic. And I mean, I talk about this stuff, and I don't maybe not say that specifically because there's way too much to talk about with why this stuff is good, but. Yeah, do check out the video about Destiny if you get a chance.
Oh yeah, definitely check out Matt's video about the Taken King and how Destiny's changed.
And also, like, if you've not played it so far, like, you're just in for a treat. I'm kind of gutted because it's like you actually have these legacy panels around the main area, the tower, which kind of show you what the game must look like for a new player, and it's cool. It's this thing of being like, oh, I see. That's how they've like structured the first part of the game now. It's loads better than it was when I was playing. And it's this thing of being like, I don't regret it, because actually what they've cleverly done is they've made it so that some of the new missions, if you have prior knowledge of the game, they almost like reward you by being like, it's almost like having somebody whispering to your ear and being like, you know what to do here, don't you? Because you know what you're doing. And that's fun. It's like a clever puzzle game thing. But if you're completely approaching the whole thing fresh, it's just great. The biggest problem with Destiny before was level 20. You hit this wall, you didn't know what to do, and people just thought, this is just a grind, fuck this. And now they've made it so that the level cap is 40. I've experienced what the level 40 cap feels like. It's fine. Because when you hit 40, you just very smoothly transition into just this sort of other stuff, and that wall is gone. And now that level 20 wall, it just doesn't exist.
I mean, this is why I'm always nervous about talking about Destiny on podcasts, because you talk about structural stuff, you talk about walls and grinds and nebulous concepts that are like as outer spacey as the game's setting itself, and you just start talking bollocks.
You do, but the important thing to know is that there were lots of people saying Destiny was fun, there were lots of people playing it, and there were lots of people criticised it a hell of a lot. But now it's all fixed, and it's just a great, dumb sci-fi shooter that's really worth checking out.
So you said before this podcast, new game, that you were playing something, and I thought you said League of Legends.
Yeah, I've been playing Loot and Legends. Which is an interesting one. I've been meaning to check it out for a while. It's an iOS game.
Okay.
And it might be on Android as well, I don't know. It's kind of a semi-sequel to Card Hunter.
Oh, yes, this. I've seen this in the App Store and not bought it.
Yeah, well, it's free to play.
Away you go.
Yeah, it's free to play with some kind of freemium elements, and it's kind of a tricky one. Basically, I do really like it, but it's one of these interesting things where, for me, Card Hunters was or Card Hunter, I can't remember which one it was. Anyway,
singular.
It was a kind of perfect, in my mind, a perfect example in terms of players of how to do like freemium. In the fact that it was free to play, but you could choose to then go, you know what, I'm going to give you 15 quid, and then you just you get some stuff, and then that just makes the game better. And the way it worked is it meant that you paid the money, and then you got access to things. So every time you got a treasure chest, you just got better stuff. You got slightly better stuff. You got one thing that you wouldn't get usually. And that was really nice, and it meant you played it, and you thought, you know what, this is a damn good strategy game. And then you pay the money, and you thought, cool, I'm done, and you've kind of bought the game. It was like a demo. What they've done with the new version is they've added a ton of new stuff.
So this is still a game where you're running around a board and you've got cards. Do you have a deck of abilities that you're building again?
I should explain it. Yeah, basically it's a game where it's sort of like faux Dungeons and Dragons style thing of little cardboard figures moving around as a grid-based board, and it's all done as if you are physically playing a kind of Dungeons and Dragons style game. But the way it works is your equipment is made up of sets of cards. And it becomes this thing of then basically it's a deck building
this again.
game.
So you put on a hat and then 7 new cards are in your deck.
Yeah. But it's much more equipment focused this time, and the decks are smaller than they used to be in a weird way. I think I might be wrong. But it becomes it's a bit easier to understand, and it becomes this thing of being oh cool, I've got a fire item for every slot on my mage. Maybe I'll try a fire
So
build.
how does it change the formula?
Well, it changes the formula by adding lots of new stuff. There's lots of new abilities. There's lots of new lots of new cards, basically.
Does it still have the storyline that you're playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, really?
And actually, it's actually better than it was before in a weird way, in the fact that it has this sort of, and I don't know how it's going to resolve, but it has this nice story of the idea that the guy who's DMing it is borrowing his older brother's stuff. And his older brother is clearly a more senior DM.
I love this.
Doing. And it's kind of sweet, and I hope it resolves in a nice way, because it seems to have this early theme of being at one point early on when you're going to a boss battle, the guy says, oh, my brother doesn't trust me with the stuff, so he's taken it out with him. So you kind of fight this boss battle where it's all just little pictures of things stuck to chess pieces, because he's had to kind of invent it.
That's so good.
And then
he doesn't have miniatures, so he's just sticking things together.
Which is really sweet. And then you play some more of these campaign missions, and it does has this really awkward encounter where and this is quite early on, this is has this awkward encounter where his brother's kind of popping into in the chat between missions and being oh, he's getting it wrong and stuff. I hope you're having an adequate experience. And it's kind of interesting because it feels like a lot of things we talk about on Shut Up and Sit Down, of being almost it seems like his brother is clearly a better dungeon master. But he's not a good dungeon master in the fact that he's a bit of a dick.
I love that. I hope you're having an okay experience, putting pressure on his brother.
Yeah.
And
and it's he's constantly calling up the fact that his brother's doing things wrong and being oh, you haven't, he keeps saying to him, you haven't put the work in, you haven't.
Man, just a tangent. I've been a dungeon master for since I was 14, sporadically. I've dungeon master D&D and sci-fi stuff and Legend of the Five Rings and Hunter, which it doesn't matter. The point is it's just such an interesting game design challenge. If you have any interest in game design, if you're young and you're listening to this, you should absolutely try being a GM, because my God,
it's hard.
It's so hard, but it gives you the correct perspective on game design, which is you're gonna anyone who's a DM is gonna go, okay, what's my favorite orc fort? Who's gonna be my villain? What's the adventure gonna be? And then the first thing that is like your step on the road to being a good DM is realizing like, oh, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is players having fun.
Yeah.
And there's always that friction in a game, which is so useful to a game designer of like, let's say you're I don't know, they're on a road to the dungeon, and they're like, all the players are like, oh, is there a town? And you're like, well, yeah. But I tell you what, if they all want to go to a town,
You make a town.
you make a fucking town.
Yeah.
And it's when they get bored, you'll notice before they do, and it's making sure they leave the town before they get bored.
And then it's when the game design comes in. The fact that you don't plan there to be a town there. You just have a town ready for when it seems like they need one.
And that's the put the work in thing. Like, I think the most useful thing I came up with as far as my trick, like, when I was DMing this like Wild Westian thing, I had a list of names sellotaped to the back of my GM screen, so that if they ever asked, oh, who's this guy's name, I could say the name, because that was the difference between them going like, oh, this is a real person, we're on the right track, and maintaining the illusion that everything they're doing is pre-prepared, which is really exciting as a player, versus them going, oh, he's fucking making it up.
He's making it up.
Yeah, and that's huge. So I would have this list of names and just check and draw a name from it and remember it.
Yeah, no, it's a thing.
So anyway, I just love that this fiction is being represented in a game.
No, and the thing is that the first game, Card Hunter, I loved the mechanics of it, and in a way, actually, I think in my experience and things I'm going to say in a minute about Loot and Legends will probably be painted by the fact that a lot of the stuff isn't new to me. A lot of the mechanics are really fucking clever, and when I first discovered it with Card Hunter, I was kind of blown away by how smart a lot of the design was.
So, would you recommend people get Loot and Legends just for the ideas and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. It's one of these things where the first game had this very simple story of like, kind of, it was like the whole premise of the game was like, it's like these people playing this game and they're actually playing it, and the guy who's running the game is in love with the pizza delivery girl, and what's gonna happen? And it was sort of like a bit awkward actually in a weird way. But this is better, but I kind of don't know where the story is going. I don't know if the story is going to be this awkward thing that the guy learns to put the effort in and become better, or if the guy learns to just have fun and tell his older brother that it doesn't matter.
That's what you want.
Because we're having fun, which is what I want. But I know
that he stands up to his brother somehow.
But I
or like that the brother says, "I'm taking over as GM," and you have to beat him. That'd be great.
I don't know, but it's the story is already better. The premise was already really cool. This idea that you're playing this physical game, but now the story is just better.
See, you're smiling now. I'm surprised you're hesitant to recommend it.
Well, the thing is, the first Card Hunter had this sort of that, and you could play the story campaign, or you could play this online multiplayer where you're actually going head to head with other people. With the iPad version, which is, it's not the same game. That's the thing is, it is kind of a semi-sequel. There's a lot of new stuff in there, but instead of having a head to head multiplayer game, you have this sort of this new game, which is like a kind of skirmish mode. And the way skirmish mode works is you're just put up against 3 other like enemies kind of equal to you, but they get harder as you go on. Mm-hmm. But it's a weekly reset thing. So it's a weekly thing, and basically the idea is you play missions, and as you go up, you kind of pass these checkpoints on the XP meters that give you just freebies, like maybe some more gold, maybe a chest you can open. And it's just a bit more... There's a thing it does that I don't know how I feel about, because it changes the way I play the game, and actually it takes some of the enjoyment out of it. And what it does is it does this thing where, rather than what it did in the first thing, if you can pay a one-off fee and then you just are part of the club,
yeah,
and then you get extra things.
I forgot it was free to play. Okay.
It does this thing where basically you can choose to pay money to become part of the club for a set amount of time.
Okay.
And it means that rather than it being a set amount of game time, it's a set amount of real time.
Well, you're probably only going to play this game for like 1 month, right? That's how long you play any game for.
Well, what I've done is, because I like it, and because I respect the devs, and I like the game, and I'm playing it and I'm enjoying it, there's a kind of basic set you can buy for about £8, and you get like a bunch of pizza, which is kind of the kind of freemium like a currency that allows you to buy chests and stuff, or to buy more of this kind of Loot Club time, and it gives you 24 hours of Loot Club time. But what
Wait, 24 hours?
Yeah.
Not a month or something?
No.
What?
This is the thing, and the thing is, when you buy this pack, you can keep buying more 24 hours with these pizza packs, but it's the fact that it's either 24 hours or like a week, and not a month.
What does the time get at you? I'm missing this.
Well, it means that when you play the game, when you complete missions, you get a chest, and there will be an item in it that will always be like a slightly better item, which you won't get.
Weird.
So it's not a big deal, because you don't need it, and it's one of those games where actually you don't need to spend any money at all if you don't want to. But what happens is, I like the little weird tournament mode where you're playing against these AI, like 3v3 matches where you're playing against an AI, and the AI seems quite smart. I like the fact that sometimes it actually gives up when it knows it's lost in a weird way, which I'm like, I like you. You're not wasting my time. But then the problem is, sometimes as a reward, and this is a dumb complaint, but I can't get my head over it. Sometimes as a reward for winning one of these little things, you go past a little peak on the XP meter, and it gives you 120 minutes of this loot club thing.
Yeah.
And then what this does is it changes this game from being an iPad game that I just like to dip into and play. It makes me feel like
you're wasting your time.
When there's this XP buff thing that MMOs do, it makes me feel like then I should play it for the next 2 hours.
Oh,
because I'm getting extra stuff, but only for 2 hours. And it's like...
that's a bummer, especially when you're self-employed.
Well, no, I'm actually I was talking about it this morning, but I'm kind of in the process of trying to write something which is about the interesting knock-on effects of every game now vying not just for your time and your money, but for your devoted attention, and this big thing of games as ecosystems, and the fact that it's becoming exhausting and having interesting effects on multiple things. But I just found it a bit don't do this, man. I'll give you money. I like you, but I play Destiny. I'm trying to play Metal Gear Solid 5. I'd like to play The Witcher 3. Don't be an iPad game which is then kind of trying to lock me in.
The answer is just to put it down, but if you and I had listened to games, we're wired to respond when a game says jump. We're jump for how many points?
Yeah, and so I think if you just play it through the campaign and you avoid the kind of other stuff, it will probably be a free game which you can choose at one point to just chuck some dosh, have some fun with. But I think as well, as I said originally, I think my opinion of it is slightly slanted by the fact that when I first discovered Card Hunter a few years ago, I was really impressed by the mechanics.
So you reckon if people downloaded Loot and Legends now, they'd be
they might be more
these ideas are crazy.
Well, it's just very smart in the fact that it has this grid-based movement. It has ranged combat of you can attack this.
But you've got limited hands of cards.
You've got limited hands of cards, and you have to discard down to 3 at the end of each turn. And it also has this clever thing of the fact that the cards go from left to right in terms of how new they are in your hand. So the oldest cards are always at the back of your hand, and there are skills which force people to discard their oldest cards.
Oh, that's wicked.
So it does
so good.
It does really, really cool things, and this game came out at the same time as Hearthstone. So the weird thing about Loot and Legends is I'd recommend people check it out, but I'd say just be wary of your relationship with the free-to-play stuff. It's not evil, but also I kind of fucking get it, because this came out at the same time as Hearthstone, and it's so much smarter and more interesting than Hearthstone, and no one fucking played it.
Do whatever it takes.
Because, and now it's this thing of being they had a completely fair free-to-play system, and they probably didn't do that well, and now they've tried to reinvent it and add stuff and make it an iOS game, and I get that.
Well, I'm on their side. I think they're great devs,
and that's why I've given them 8-9 quid, because I gave them money as well with Card Hunter, just because it's this thing of being this is cool. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to play it for, but it's very cool. And
I'm down. I'm going to download it.
I'm going to say the one problem I have with it is the app seems to crash a lot. Oh. But for its merit, it doesn't ever lose anything. It's it does this thing of being crash, and then you load it up again, and it's exactly where you were before. So it's kind of annoying, but doesn't matter.
Okay, let's wrap up by talking about a game which is just so the opposite of free to play. It's full of heart, it's full of love, it's just so good, and it's Undertale.
Ah, yeah.
So, yeah, God, you played it for about an hour, I played it for about an hour, and Christ, I should explain it. So Undertale is a game that looks like a JRPG, looks like an 8-bit era JRPG. You play a kid who falls into a world of monsters, and you can fight the monsters. And what separates it from the stereotype is that you can also talk to the monsters. And it's, oh God, what was it? The developers are based on a Persona game from way back in the day, where you could sporadically talk to monsters, and every once in a while you can persuade a monster not to fight you. And it was very weird and very loved for that. And this developer said, well, what if that was the whole game? And so Undertale is a game where you can talk to monsters and figure out why they're hurting and why they're fighting you, and they're all kind of crap. Yeah. And I think my favourite in the first half an hour is there's a jelly that's wobbling, and it wobbles at you, and you take damage.
And you can flirt with it.
And you check it out, and it's wobbling seductively, and you realise that it's just sexually lonely. So you kind of wobble with it and flirt with it, and it's and then it leaves you alone. And
some enemies, once you've done it once, you never have to do it again. You're
they're like, oh, you're that girl or that guy. The character is gender ambiguous, which is fun. But
I think it's supposed to be a girl, but
it's not. Apparently, the dev said it could be interpreted. That's how they designed that sprite. It's a girl.
I just love the fact that the sprite doesn't look like a hero. It just looks like someone just really fed up.
She just doesn't care. Yeah, he doesn't get whatever. Yeah,
yeah, but I love it. It's that doesn't look like a hero, but I like that. But no, it's weird because it's it's kind of that whole fish bubble thing of being these monsters. are just trying to get on with their day, and they've got like their own luggage and their own beef. And
So here's what I want to achieve here. I talked about it in Uniservice and did my best to sell why it was good, and I guess fucked it, because you said that you've seen so many people talk about it and shout about it, but you had to play it not because someone had convinced you, but because you could not yet see the reason.
It's more because I think
good.
that it's one of those games that falls victim to the fact that you kind of have lots of people saying it's really funny, it's really interesting, but then obviously because showing you specifically examples of why it's funny and interesting is just spoiling the game.
Yes.
So that you have this weird game that doesn't look to be anything, and you get shown this really innocuous footage of it, and you go, "Oh," and people go,
You would have to quote the lines exactly, together with the music that plays during them to show.
the music's great.
Oh, it's incredible.
But then, so it's one of those things where it wasn't like a diss to any of the coverage. It was more just like the fact that it's like, you get games like this from time to time where it's
no
like,
one wants to spoil it.
no one wants to talk about it, but everyone says it's good. And so you have to just look at the screenshots and go, hang on a minute, it doesn't look very good. So you just have to trust it. You have to just trust, and it is really good.
The best moment, like, if I'm going to sort of spoil anything, is in the first dungeon. Like, obviously, I beat up one monster and then like, oh god, this is awful, I'm going to talk to them all. So I talk to them all, which means I don't get any gold or XP, which is fine. You don't need it, turns out. But then as I'm just leaving the dungeon, there's like I go into a room and there's a spider web, and I check it out. And the spider web is like, there's a little sign you see, and it's like, spider bake sale, leave gold in the web, and then you can maybe take a spider cupcake, which are like tiny. And I wanted to leave gold in the web because I hadn't killed anything, I didn't have any gold, and it was just like the horrible pain in my heart of like, oh, I want to support this burgeoning spider industry.
It gets into your heart in a strange way, and it kind of does that thing of like, and actually this isn't new for JRPGs, but like it allows you to do mean things and then just sort of makes you feel bad about it.
I don't know, man. It is like JRPGs are so linear, and
not most of them, but I remember like there have been some games which have kind of allowed you to do things which you kind of think, am I being a dick?
Yeah.
And then the game catches you on it and goes, yes.
I mean, it's JRPG storytelling, like done. It has such little text box to work with, and it does it so well. Like, I think my favorite storytelling that I've seen in the last like couple of months, like of playing games, is this kindly monster who's like a very old, wise monster takes you in, and you're in this world of monsters, and your kid's like obviously having her mind blown, and then you go to bed and you wake up. Actually, it was two things. First off, the monster's like, oh, do you like cinnamon?
Yeah, I was going to say
like,
the exact same thing. Because she calls you up on the phone and goes, can I ask you a question? Do you prefer cinnamon or butterscotch? And I'm like, butterscotch. And then she's like, okay, great. And then like 2 seconds later, she calls you back and goes, but does that mean you don't like cinnamon at all? Or you're just not bothered by it? And it just basically manages to like, how it's not that it, that's what I like about it, is that it's not that it actually apes and spoofs JRPGs.
Yeah.
It like basically takes the tropes and then just like adds humanity to it in retrospect.
So this is the thing, right? The cinnamon line that you just described is funny and you laugh out loud.
Yeah.
And then like the other side of Undertale, and the thing that turns it from like, oh, a funny game into, no, seriously, you gotta play
really
this.
touching.
It's so touching. So the thing it does specifically with the fucking cinnamon thing is you later get to that monster's house, and then and like I was exploring it, and she's like, oh, your room's down the hall, but get some pie, and that I've made, the cinnamon butterscotch pie. And I found a room, and my room, and it had a bed in it. And it's like, and two things happen. First, in fact, three things. First off, you look at a toy which is in the corner, and it says, a toy, it's been here for a while, it doesn't interest you. Which is like the Ernest Hemingway saddest short story ever. That like, you now know this monster's been here for a while, it wants kids, but you don't care about the toy. So anyway, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can interact with the bed. And I can, and the kid falls asleep. And do you know what's there when I wake up?
Yeah, the pie.
The fucking slice of pie on the floor next to the bed. Yeah. And you're like, oh no. Like, this monster comes and sees you asleep, doesn't want to wake you up, puts the pie down. And then the final thing that I'll say to finish this is then you then go into the living room and the monster's like, oh, hey, did you sleep well? And it's a multiple choice conversation with two options. The first of which is, oh yeah. And the second option is,
how do I leave?
Like, when can I go home?
Yeah.
And I couldn't bring myself to select it because it's like, are you kidding? I don't want to do that to this monster that's been sweet.
That's what's. I think that is the key of it. Is people say, "Oh, it's really funny." It is funny, but it's more. It's just incredibly human.
Yeah.
And it really,
which is funny for a game about monsters, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, it does remind me. There's a classic on the on the Mega Drive called Soleil, or I think it was called I can't remember what it's called.
Oh god, I think you've talked about.
Yeah, I've talked about this before, but they had a big theme about the monsters being. I think it was called. I can't remember what it's called. Something they had about Babel, and it was about this idea that the monsters weren't evil, and actually the hero of the human folk, the guy who was.
Yeah, that's a story
he was
we've
a dick
heard before. Yeah.
Basically, you know, and you didn't realize he was a dick until you kind of saw it from the monster's perspective. He was just an arsehole. But then, yeah, so that idea of the fact that these monsters are just, they're having a bad time, like, and they've got their own hang-ups, and I like that. And it reminds me of people, and the way they're just like, they're not bad people. They're just like, I think one of the things, it's very early, and it's not really a massive spoiler, but I like that there's one of the types of monsters.
Oh, is it just the wasp?
Well, no, it's a type of monster who will always attack you. If there's other monsters there.
Yeah, that's exactly the one I was going to say.
And
you check it to read its little bio, and it's like, it seems to be trying to impress the other monsters, and so you get rid of the other monsters, then it just starts bouncing.
It just chills out, and it's this thing of like, it just doesn't like being around other things.
No, it's not that it doesn't like. I think it's like it's being egged on, like it needs to perform. It's a performative thing.
Yeah.
It knows it's a monster, and there's other monsters, so it's going to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. And it's even just that simple thing of just, it's this weird thing of having to deal with these things one thing at a time, and rather than fighting them. But it's quite sad, because also sometimes it gives you the opportunity, what I thought it would be with its whole, like, you can talk to the monsters, would be like, do you want to fight them, or do you want to love them? And it's not that simple, because there are some monsters where, like, you can see they're, like, they're just, you check them out, and they're like, oh, they're just a bit frail or whatever. And you can just be mean to them, and they go away.
That's...
And you feel so guilty. It's this weird thing of, like, I've never felt guilty about, very rarely felt guilty about killing monsters, but when you have these, like, monsters that have low self-esteem, and you just go, like, I think there's one of the monsters I met early on, and I just went to it, no one will ever love you as you are. And it just left. And that was it. I'd won. And it was like, and yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated because we've been trying to, it's one of these weird things where we talked about spoilers in an episode of Dark Souls really recently, but I think it's one of these things where sometimes if you can't demonstrably show people why a game is worth checking out, you kind of occasionally have to just tease a few things just to encourage people to look at it. But I have been really blown away by it, and found it within the first hour, like, a couple of things, like, I had a couple of moments that made me laugh out loud immediately, and I had a couple of moments which I found quite upsetting. And
that's a pretty good hit rate.
That's
for
a very good
cheap
hit rate.
game that you're playing for like half an hour. Yeah,
it's very cool, and I'm looking.
And like all the moments in between, you're just engaged.
Yeah,
like you're just interested in.
I mean, I think the one thing, and I think other people have had the same thing as well. The one thing I'm not so keen on is the random battles, just because it's like after you've kind of solved each puzzle of the monster once, you're kind of like, I don't want to keep doing this again and again. It's kind of annoying. Feels a bit dated, but apart from that, I'm really, really enjoying it. And to be honest, I've played JRPGs for most of my life, and I can put up with that shit. If
it's worth it,
If it's worth it, then I'll put up with it.
It does raise the interesting question that I have no interest in answering, which is like the fact that you say, "Oh, I can kill monsters and I don't feel guilty," but which is a fine attitude.
I don't want to be a dick to them.
But if you're a dick, it's like, "Oh, that feels terrible." Which is ethically so upside down, I don't know where to begin with.
Well, I think it's just because they add this humanity. They make these creatures seem flawed, and I think that's the thing is, I think maybe, you happily kill monsters in games, but maybe if you knew that monster you're about to kill, if you just, like, put your sword in your sheath and said, I feel no one's ever going to like you, and that they would just leave and cry, maybe you wouldn't kill them, because I think it's more to do with the fact that, especially in video games, it's that classic thing of, like, people have worked out that people don't like to kill monsters that are smaller than they are. Like, you have to make the creatures bigger than your character, because then they seem like a threat.
Oh, yeah.
And there's lots of things like that I think basically it's more that we're egged on for the very start. We're like, fucking kill him, kill him, kill him. We're encouraged to see these things as a threat. And I think as soon as you deconstruct that and just go, this thing isn't a threat in whatever way you do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the most effective games in history do that by making something which is, like, very big and appears to be very dangerous, and then just basically kind of leak it to you. Oh, it's harmless. That's when the real guilt comes in. So it's kind of actually, it seems super, super clever, but actually it's probably just quite a simple design in a weird way.
Yeah, I was going to say something that's completely left my head. It's, I think I've heard that some of the enemies in it as well, you can't even talk to them. Like some of the, I guess, bosses and stuff, you have to work out that they just have to wail on you for a while. Like they just have to beat you up. Because, like, eventually then they'll get, like, anger out and stuff. Like, it's really clever. All the cute things.
Yeah, I've killed a few things that I wish I hadn't, and I kind of wonder if maybe I didn't have to kill them, but I've...
Probably not. I feel sorry for the Cabal in Destiny.
Why?
Because, for a start, like,
Oh yeah, the fact they get exiled.
They get exiled and they can't come home until they kill
won.
you. But no, it's weirder than that. So I have a read on the Cabal, which I haven't read the Grimoire cards to like back this up. But the shape of their armor and the size of them, they just seem really sad. Like no one wants to be that size. There's all kinds of weird stuff about the Cabal. Like have you noticed that the inside of their ships has padding? Like a padded cell. No. Which makes you wonder, and I think it's mentioned in one of the missions or some Grimoire card that to settle fights, Cabal would like fight each other. You know, if they can't agree on something. And so I guess, like, but why else would the inside of their ships be padded if they're like pushing past each other and being like really angry? Like,
I wouldn't feel sorry for them. I think they're just a big, stupid species who like fighting.
But they're not stupid. They've developed spaceships and crossed the galaxy.
But the first thing you're told about it is that they destroy planets when they get in their way.
Oh yeah,
that's the first line of dialogue in the game when you're introduced to the Cabal. So I don't know. I kind of compare them to being like in one of the
like bulldozers.
Ian Banks books, I think, which is about like this squid race of things that have just developed all these arms that can hold 8 guns at once, and their hobbies are not to like.
Oh, I know.
They're just like hunting.
They're in accession.
Yeah, they like to hunt things,
and they're so awful.
They purposefully create things that are just good to hunt.
Oh yeah, and they genetically engineer species that can feel more pain and more fear.
Yeah. So rather than
creating,
rather than creating something which is a fair battle, they create things which are designed to be the perfect prey.
Yeah.
And they're just arseholes who like fighting and killing. And I kind of get the impression that the Cabal are a bit like that. But it is interesting, actually, the Cabal, I do love them, and I love the fact that so far in Destiny,
I like the Cabal the most.
We've not had really stuff about the Cabal. They've been like the side players.
I'm patiently waiting for the next Cabal expansion. I'm so interested in...
Yeah, I want to know what the deal is with it. What's the deal with these guys? Why are they here?
I mean, it's the thing that the Cabal flavour that I love the most, and this is an example of how like Destiny is super interesting, that it's just buried in backstory you can't get to, is that the Cabal are like part of these legionary ships that travel outwards. Like, they just go out from the homeworld. But the thing is, they've been out for so long, a lot of them can't remember... I think it's like either where their homeworld is or why they left. Like, they've just been travelling in a line, destroying planets that are in their way, just obliterating everything, and they don't even know why. Like, that's awesome, and it's full of super little awesome touches like that.
Maybe they'll remember why at some point, and it can be some story.
And then they'll leave. Do we have questions this week?
Probably not. I need to sort it out. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort it out. I think I'm going to I've been thinking about this, and I think I might just have a dedicated place. A dedicated kind of place with a post on Cool Ghosts where people can just ask questions and then just sort of go through and do stuff based on that.
And then what, we delete comments as we answer questions?
I might just I don't know. I haven't worked it out, but I mean either that or just saying go back and ask last week's. I can't work out what's the best system. Either go to last week's thread and ask questions.
It's a roller coaster. We're still working it out. It's the Wild West. It's a roller coaster themed around the Wild West.
But I like to do it on the site rather than Twitter because we have had a lot of people over the past year saying, how can I ask you questions that are a bit longer? Obviously, don't write them too long because editing is a good thing. But at the same time, I do appreciate some questions can't be compacted into 140.
All right.
However, we don't have any questions this week because we've literally just done about an hour and a half of Q&A. So,
if you want questions, then my God, do check out
the
vid on our Patreon.
But this will be your last proper Daft Souls for a little while.
I was going to say, I'm going to Vancouver, City of Dreams... and sushi.
Canadians.
There's not much cheese there though.
No,
that's going to be tough.
You can work it out.
I'll work it out. And I'm going to be hanging out with Paul Dean and collaborating on some stuff for Shut Up and Sit Down. But yeah, I'm not going to be around for 2 months. So while I've deeply enjoyed being your co-host, partner in crime, I'm going to be replaced by Joe Screbbles. Is that right?
Joe Screbbles is going to be standing in as the resident Quentin Smith.
I could not ask for a more lovely replacement.
He's absolutely excellent. I'm really looking forward to having him on as a co-host.
Does he have the voice down? Does he have the really loud laugh?
Probably not. He's got a different voice. He's a different human being. But we might have some stuff from you in the meantime. Have some like little phoned in features or something.
I'll be phoned in. Literally phoned in as opposed to phoned in the sense of
one way or the other. We'll find out.
It's been real, Matt. Thank you everybody for listening. I will be back in December,
but in the meantime Quinns will still be on coolghost.net doing cool videos, as will I. And
do you like Sonic the Hedgehog, people at home? If so, keep an eye on coolghost.net.
Yeah, we've got some stuff cooking up. We've got some fun stuff. Thank you very much as ever to listening to Daft Souls. That's not a sentence, but I do appreciate you.
Take care, kids.
Goodbye.